Hello and welcome to Season 3 of the Push podcast. My name is Jack Ferguson, an experienced marketing and sales consultant with a science background, and I'm your host. This season of the podcast is essential listening for small and medium-sized companies looking for their next stage of growth. Myself and other experts will explore common problems in marketing, product, and sales. We will deconstruct them and then detail straightforward, evidence-based remedies for you. I aim to give you both inspiration and practical solutions to push through similar challenges in your own company. Thanks for being here, and don't forget to subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. Hello and welcome to episode 11, season 3. In this episode, we're covering customer acquisition costs, or CAC for short. We look at the effectiveness of CAC as a metric for a hypothetical 50-person app development company, App Crafter Studios. If you've been following along this season, you would have heard us talk about this hypothetical company on many occasions. We use the hypothetical to give you more of an opportunity to put context into our recommendations and suggestions. And by we, I mean myself and Alex Urquhart, product marketing specialist. So, is CAC useful, or is it a waste of time? We will answer this and more in this episode. Some of the specifics we cover will include what factors can influence the accuracy of CAC measurements, how marketing agencies game CAC, whether a mid-sized company should use CAC or something else, how executive and marketing teams form different perspectives around ROI, how to get a wife in 20 dates, the Doorman Theory, and how company culture and marketing are interconnected. If you want to find Alex or I on the internet, our socials, go to the description on this episode on whatever platform you're listening on. Let's bring in Alex. Hi Alex, good to see you again.
Great to be back, mate.
What are we talking about today? Well, I'll tell you actually. That's what a lazy way that I could have started that and going, mate, you tell me.
Do you need me here or just keep going?
Talking about App Crafter Studios again today, and Sarah, our friend, the CEO of App Crafter Studios, has asked me some questions, one in particular around customer acquisition costs. So bearing in mind this is a 50-person service-based business at this time, 50 headcount, I want to talk a bit about what I think of them and whether they're actually a useful metric or not. They're thrown around a lot, especially in early stage as well, and I would preface this with saying, yes, there's some differences there, but I'm actually going to say that I don't think it's a great metric to use for a customer.
Okay.
Sorry, for a company of this size.
Okay. Cost of acquisition, you're saying?
Yes.
So is that CAC?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yep. So, yes, should define it first. Let's define it.
Go for it.
So what is customer acquisition costs, or CAC, as you said? So the amount of money it costs that you have to spend to acquire a customer. So I'll define that loosely for now as they don't know who you are through to they know who you are. But that's where part of the problem of customer acquisition costs are for bigger companies and even probably for smaller companies at some stage, because no one, there's not that many people who don't know who you are and then become a customer of a company like App Crafter Studios, right? They know who you are for a little while and then they move along the buying process and then
other brands get in the way and the other priorities take charge.
Yeah, but they knew who you were, and all the money that you actually spent to get them to know you over time and to nurture them in ways you didn't even know you were nurturing them is wild. So that's one issue I have with it, is it doesn't really take into consideration existing brand equity when you're talking about customer acquisition costs.
Okay.
Because people might, if someone already basically is about to buy from you, right?
Yep.
And you send them an ad and they happen to click on that ad and buy from you.
Yep.
The ad gets the credit. But does it deserve the credit? Again, it took them through the last step, but they knew who you were, they liked you, they're about to buy from you. And instead of clicking on the organic link, they clicked on the paid link.
Yep.
And now your agency is saying to you, look, we got a sale.
We're so good at this,
Yeah, and little tip there to everyone. Every agency that you work with will come in and try and capitalize on your existing brand equity. That's the first thing they'll do. That's what will get short-term results, because that's people who are closer to buying from you that were already closer to buying from you before you even started working with them.
Okay. And so is that saying all the brand equity that you've built over, say, years?
Yeah.
These customers who know you, and probably for the last 6 months, they're always going to buy you in six months' time.
Yep.
And the agency sort of rocks up and goes, "Oh, look at all these people that we got." And it's like, well, is that attributed to you, or is that
exactly?
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Exactly. Like you think about, I was doing this the other night. Actually, I was talking to a friend, and this obsession with measuring awareness and purchase and customer acquisition costs. And it's all well and good, but everyone wants to push people through this 5-step process that you can perfectly measure, right? Yet I pointed out to this person, I said, okay, well, let's talk about some brands you know. We're on a walk, right? There's there's nothing triggering this, right? So any brand they say, Domino's, Grilled,
what did they say, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, Domino's, Grilled, Zembrero. So I think they were thinking about food at the time, obviously.
That makes sense.
But there was nothing triggering those brands. But they're pretty close to buying from those brands. Probably again. They're probably already a repeat customer, all that type of thing. But that moment and that awareness has been built over a long time. So if someone comes in and goes, I'll run an ad at that person, and then they're going to click on that ad, and then that means they buy, and we can measure it and attribute it. Well,
that was us. That's $100 for that lead,
exactly,
or whatever it is.
Yeah. So you then measure the cost of that ad and versus how many people you got to buy from that ad, which is one of the problems I have with it, especially for bigger companies. I think there's an argument for it for a smaller company and for a newer company, because that brand equity is not already there. That brand awareness is not already there. So it might be closer to reality, I would say.
Okay. Is it the same with any new market? Like if you went to the US, for example, if Australia went to the US, no one knows them. Direct marketing effort probably is more realistic because there's no brand equity.
Yes. So in that case, the acquisition costs would be more appropriate, I think. But we're talking about AppCrafter Studios being a company that is established somewhat. There's already going to be people who are along the buying process who are aware of them, who just haven't bought yet, who AppCrafter Studios don't even know. So that's the problem I have with this acquisition cost metric, is that it brings us all in that direction again of, I want the 5 steps, that this ad, then this email, then this, and then that, and then someone buys. And it doesn't reflect reality all that much.
Yes. And particularly as you I think for these complex buying processes and complex products, there is a lot of stuff. I was reading the other day, there's like attribution of that, and like you're saying, brand equity, and there's so much, even purely just with the marketing, for example, side of things. There's stuff saying that, if you were to buy a new Tesla, which ad did they see? Was it the brand equity? Was it? There's so many things to attribute it to that someone who's a bit of an expert in this space, of the attribution stuff, was talking about. It gets so complex that you trying to follow that 5 steps is going to take you more off kilter and give you the worst representation. And they started looking at before and after around if we increase our marketing activity by 10% and sales stay the same, whatever happens in the middle, we don't know. But then it's like, okay, maybe that did nothing. And then we increase it by 5% and then it doubles the sales. Then they go, okay, there's something there. There's a give and take. That's a whole nother thing. But it's just to that point, what you were trying to say there is like, it is so difficult to attribute it as well.
Yes. What is your opinion on attribution as a concept?
Probably pretty much what you were saying before. I think early days makes sense.
Okay.
Like if you're new to the market, then frankly any activity you get is going to be probably off you on your own accord. Coca-Cola probably survived the last 60 years of brand equity, where it's like a new product is like you've got
What's
to
that brand, Coca-Cola?
You got to survive off all these years. So I think any data is good, and CAC I think has always been championed by VCs because they're the biggest wigs in the room, and at the end of the day, they're a bunch of CFOs who, whilst important, I'm married to a finance person, so you've got to know those things, but it's such a, as you're saying, linear way to look at it. Money in, money out, what does it cost? And if anyone's ever worked for these companies, that is not the case. It's so complex. So I think having a form of metric is better than none.
Yeah, interesting.
To an extent. So you've got something to look at. If you've hired 17 marketers and salespeople and spending $1 million a year on ads and your sales aren't changing, something's wrong. I don't know where, but something's wrong.
Okay, that's Yeah, interesting. So, because that's the next part I was going to talk about. It's a natural question. Like, what am I spending? What am I getting back?
Yep.
It's
what's my ROI?
It's totally understandable when we go to the supermarket. I don't know how much apples are these days, but if you give them $2, the supermarket, you want the apple, right?
Yep.
So it's natural. This is not.
What am I getting for my money?
Exactly. What
Yep.
am I getting for for what I'm putting in effectively? Yep. So I'll caveat that too. That's I get it. Like, we all want to know that, but that's why what we do is difficult, and it's very challenging. And the other thing I've noticed in my career is that everyone measures it differently.
Yep.
So you can include media spend in acquisition costs, and that's it. You can include team members.
Yep.
You can include a mix of both.
Yep.
There's all these ways that you can measure it. So yeah, and I don't know if I've ever really been happy with how someone's measured it, but that's another story. It's a seductive metric, I think, in a lot of cases, but it's not my favorite metric. And I'll talk about how I would approach it shortly.
Yep.
But I'll also talk about a friend I was speaking to the other day who's a head of marketing, or was a head of marketing for quite a well-known brand actually, and he built that over time. He talked about when they were running a $50,000 ad campaign. So they're spending $50,000 on ads each month. Might be every fortnight, but just let's use month as something to go off. Not making any attributable sales. So let's turn off the ads, right? That's what makes sense. And then sales went down, across the board. So that's of a company that, you'd know it. Everyone would know it if I said it. But they, there's that temptation, they're not doing anything, so let's turn them off.
Yes. Which is, I think, why there's so much of a rift between executive teams or leadership teams and marketing teams.
Yes.
Because it's, to your point then, I want to see my return. I can't show you it. I don't know it. Or I can't show it clearly.
Yes, I think, so that's where brand diagnostics come in for me, because you can measure awareness. So you can measure that and consideration and preference and all these things, and they're approximates, they're not exact, but which everything is. I'm sorry, but you get closer to the truth. You don't get absolute
something to
truth.
measure. You can see something.
Yeah. So that's one way of going about it, which I did talk about in the brand diagnostics episode. But that doesn't necessarily tell you how much this, say, X campaign contributed to that awareness growth. As well, and it doesn't tell you how the combination of these campaigns contributed to it.
Yes. And what was the triggering thing? There's interesting. It's funny you sort of said it before. I'm keen to get your thoughts on this. There was a video I shared a while ago, and it was the Doorman Theory. Did you see that one at all?
No.
And it's a market. I cannot remember his name, but he's really good. A big British guy. But he talked about, you take a hotel and they have the doorman at the front, who traditionally for many years, and they said, if you go to the Ritz or a really nice hotel, the expectation is you have a doorman, person, a host who opens the door for you, lets you in, and sort of moves through, and then you get the business analysts or the investors go, what's the ROI on that doorman? And they go, oh, well, he opens the door, and then they get the consultants come in from probably McKinsey, and they go like, oh, well, if we have an automatic door opener, we can save the ROI and the risks of this person and the human cost, and they get a pat on the back, and they sort of move on, and then they get rid of the doorman, and then all of a sudden, as you said, the sales start to go down, and customer satisfaction starts to go down, and reoccurring revenue starts to go down. And they're so baffled, but they're like, there's so many intangible things that that door person does, makes people feel welcome, gives them confidence, recommendations, places to park, security, all these things that you don't attribute to their core function. As a leader of a company, you want it to be binary. Like, you want it to go, what's making me money, what's losing me. And I think, this is why they get paid a lot, right? Because they need to learn how to understand it. There's not just a spreadsheet of do this, don't do this. So anyway, I think that just made me think of that then. That's
a great one. And like that doorman's effectively a brand asset, really. That's what's expected when you come along. It's part of the service. It's part of the experience. And if you take it away and you're known for that, that's a huge branding mistake.
And it's part of the product, you say.
You're losing that ability to keep encoding that every time someone experiences it. So you don't want to take away what's memorable about
Yes.
what you do.
Yes, and
And what you're known for.
Yeah, that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. And it's that hard, you're saying, that attribution of how do you know? Because there might be places where they do get rid of the doorman and they save money off old mate and they can hire another cleaner to get the rooms done faster and no one cares. But as you're saying, it's probably part of their brand, right? If they're known for that doorman or if the doorman's just taking up space. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I find that interesting.
And someone comes along and it's like, oh, this isn't a proper hotel.
Yep.
Where's the doorman?
Yes, correct.
You know, they keep walking.
Yeah, and as you said before, I think the analogy he used was if you're going to charge people $500 a night, you probably need that touch. You need a doorman or you need something. You can't treat it like a basic, 3-star hotel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's positioning as well, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
That doorman is that premium, like we're positioning ourselves as a premium space. So
literally white glove service.
Yeah. It reminded me too of this concept called forward encoding, which talks about how the performance of an ad or a piece of media in one channel enhances the performance of media in another channel. So the idea that it's encoded, the media that you consume, and let's say Facebook as just a general rule, or like let's assume Facebook as an example. You consume a video on there, and then you consume something similar from the same brand on a different medium. That medium performs better then because you've become familiar with it. It's encoded as two separate memories if you do adjust things with the creative, but it makes the brand look bigger as well. But the Facebook media would get no credit for that. Generally. There is, and then people are going to go, econometrics and all this type of thing. I know there is a discipline around this. So yes, there's that too. But those people know that it's not perfect either. So talk to some behind closed doors is all I'll say. So there's all these things that that contribute to a sale, as we talk about all the time. A sale is an outcome. That's what it is. There's all these things that contribute to what your brand is. All these experiences, and it's not just one thing. It's a doorman. It's not just
it's an ecosystem.
Lying in the bed.
Everyone wants to think of it as a conveyor belt, but it's an ecosystem.
Exactly. So I do feel that this acquisition cost idea can contribute to that. That idea.
Agreed.
That it is a conveyor belt, and that people will just perform or they'll behave in a way you just want them to. Like, I'll just see this and then I'm just going to buy it,
And it's that get rich quick thing of like, a CEO wants to go, what decision I have to make to increase sales? And they hope it's just, increase ad spend or whatever that is if there's good ROI. And I think also too, it's that, I think understanding from their perspective, CAC is also, if you're an investor and you say, for example, from their perspective, and they're looking at 20 companies a day, it's sort of like those first, cheat sheet they want to see. What's the CAC? How many customers? What's their growth rate? Does that tell a full story? No. And particularly, in my opinion, early stages does not tell the story. But to your point, are they measuring the total cost of the team and how many sales they made that month, or are they measuring the sales guy's time or the ad time, the ad spend? So I think I get it. They need a metric to look at it by. And if it was a company that had 3 customers and their CAC was $2 million, you'd be terrified. Like something's clearly very wrong. But I definitely agree. It's not a clear metric for people to go off. It's that cheat sheet of looking at a business and rating it versus on its profitability. It's one metric. You got to look at many others.
And that's why customer acquisition costs can come down over time too, is because, one, you get your messaging in that better, but also you've built awareness with what you were doing before. That people just haven't bought from you yet. And
your brand equity goes through the roof.
So that's the other point I was going to make, is that when you have a marketing and sales function, and this is Sarah would have this challenge, how do I measure it? Like, and we have talked about this on previous episodes, but we're talking about specifically customer acquisition costs here. What do I know or think's reasonable? So let's start with what I think the functions are there to do. And so they are to make money, they are to make sales, but they are also to build brand equity, because that is effectively future sales. There's the part that's easy to measure, which is sales, and then there's the part that's much more difficult to measure, which is the brand equity. So that's what I'd say. I think I'd start there. And brand equity, there are people who do quantify that in dollar terms, and what what value is this on the balance sheet, and all that type of stuff. It's a new sort of field that I've seen come out too, is this financial brand equity thing. I believe, don't quote me, but 25% of Apple's valuation is on their brand equity.
They call it goodwill, isn't it? It's like the goodwill asset or whatever it is. Yeah.
It's like, I think the best way I've heard it described is if you took away the logo and everything associating it with that brand and just left the commodity.
Would it still be worth the same?
And how many people would buy it? Because they wouldn't come into the store because it's not an Apple store.
Yep.
They wouldn't buy the product because it's not an Apple product.
Yep.
But the commodity can still be there. The computer can still be there.
Yep.
But the brand equity is what is the memory and,
Yes.
the understanding and the associations that are already existing in the collective consciousness.
Yeah. good description.
As I always say. So that's some things I would say about that. App Crafter Studios, if they've been around a while, so they likely have some customers sitting in awareness, some prospects, should I say, sitting in awareness, sitting in consideration, sitting in preference.
Yep.
They're potentially future sales. And that was potentially built by the sales and marketing function.
Yep.
Could have been this year's team, last year's, 3 years ago, 5 years ago's team.
Yep.
Or they might have contributed to it.
Yes. Yep.
This is why it's hard.
Yes. Yeah. Correct.
Yeah. So there's that tendency to not be able to see cross-functional value as well.
Yep.
Like, people want to silo things. They want to say, what are we getting out of our Facebook campaign versus our Instagram campaign and this type of thing. Again, I get it, because then you go, oh, well, let's just cut this spend. The problem with that is it's a bit like going to the gym, and that's great. You might go to the gym to build muscle or whatever, but you also get cross-functional value, more clarity, better mental health. You get all these things that
compound to that goal.
The gym contributes to, right? Like, so someone could go, I will go to the gym and that's where I build muscles. And they could go, I go to my psychologist and that's where I fix my mental health. But really, is the gym actually also contributing to your mental health?
Yeah.
Like, is it just a psychologist? So this is where it's difficult. This is why building a business is difficult. This is why marketing and sales is very difficult. Again, we're dealing with what's in people's head.
Correct. And it's that saying, how you do anything is how you do everything. And I think that for those ones, that same thing, if it's all connected, if the brand's high and the product's doing well, if it's a really good product, then that affects the brand, which affects the marketing. And I think it's all, that old question that you get all these company leaders go, that what's attributing, what budget can I cut, what do I need to increase? It's an ecosystem who sort of knows. And I think it was Simon Sinek has his stuff about, similar to the gym analogy, and he talks about, companies go, oh, we need a better culture, right? How do we hire it? And it's like, he goes, it's kind of like with if you met your wife and said, okay, when did you know that she loved you or you loved her? And they go, oh, was it after the first 7 minutes? And he goes, well, no, did you just get to know her? Was it after 7 years? And they were like, yeah, definitely. Okay, so between 7 minutes and 7 years, they loved you for some point. And then he's like, oh, how many dates did you take her on before she loved you? And it's like, well, I don't know, I can calculate it, but is that attributed to that? It added to it, but it's this whole this complex thing that there is no simple.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, You get a wife by taking someone on 20 dates.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's like once you reach this point, so you can cut costs at the 21st date. Like, take her on terrible dates after 21 because you've got to the goal at 20. Yeah. So wow, it's interesting. But that whole thing of it's a complex point. People want simple answers; they don't exist.
Oh, that's my favorite analogy we've had so far in this whole season. Thank you, Alex. Yeah, so, okay, look, lots of talk, lots of conceptual talking, and this has been fun. What the hell should she do, right? I'll be interested if you got an opinion on that. And if you do, think about it now before I say mine, because, you can't steal mine. There's things you can do, like have a yearly budget where you then measure what's called contribution margin. So, like the investment you put in, how much did that increase sales above the baseline? So the contribution margin, increase in sales minus increase in variable costs is how that's measured.
Okay.
So that's one way to look at it, because you'd have your fixed costs, which are there anyway. And if you want to change your fixed costs, then that's, you're restructuring at that point. Contribution margin is okay. We're putting in variable costs. We're increasing our variable costs. How much did that increased sales?
What did that attribute to?
Yeah. Yep. So it still doesn't really speak to the brand equity point though necessarily as well, because that's where the brand diagnostics come in. It's like, okay, we did all this effort this year, but did we actually, what brand equity did we build? What future sale opportunities did we build? So that's a piece of it as well. So it's contribution margins, one thing you could look at. You could look at brand diagnostics, like how much did awareness grow, that type of thing. I spoke about another episode about measuring how many people are in consideration and preference and whatnot, and you could measure that from year to year. You could put a dollar figure on that as well if you wanted to. So those are some ways I'd go about it. Again, not perfect, but yeah, I think customer acquisition costs they're a convenient tool at this size that's quite inaccurate.
Yep.
Because of the brand equity that's already there.
Yes.
And then the brand equity you're building for next year and 2 years from now.
Yep. It's all compounding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I think I'd probably, on a similar vein, I always feel like people should, particularly this size of company, I think you should always be experimenting with growth experiments, I guess. But the idea that, hey, you know, our evergreen stuff is we send a newsletter once a month and we have partnership referrals or whatever the fundamentals are that keeps the wheels turning. And then it's like I'm a big believer once a month or even once a quarter, swapping one out or changing something or adding something. And I think much the same sort of answer to what you've sort of given then is if you've never done TikTok ads, which feels weird for them to do that, but like let's just say you're going to start doing that, like organic, and then over the 3 months, you'd have to have better metrics too, right? Like how many inquiries did we get? How many conversions did we get? Or whatever those ones. If that doesn't change or it goes down, I think 3 months is long enough depending on your sales cycle. If your sales cycle is a week, you should know quite quickly. If it's 12 months, it'd be hard to tell. But I think then you, over those 3 months, and you go, right, what did we change? What was the effect? And then we go, okay, that was still really good. Still hard to look at brand equity because that could be
because that was existing.
100%. But if it's like every month we do that and we got a baseline of, hey, we've done this for 6 months now, this is what we're getting pretty consistently. We do like sales teams that I work with, and I always make sure it's like the biggest ones, like how many leads came in, how many did you move, how many did you close? And when we trial stuff and we look at those attributes and go, okay, we did a lot of road trip conferences in April. In August, we got a spike in sales. It's like, okay, well, that seems pretty reasonable. Maybe it was that. And then we sort of dive into that more. But yeah, it is I think trying to understand the middle game is too hard, in my opinion, particularly for this. If you're in B2C, sorry, I meant to say that before. B2C, I think if you're selling hats and a lot of it's a standard purchase, still brand equity exists.
Yep.
But it's probably easier to go, we doubled ad spend on Facebook and we increased sales by 30%. Makes sense. If the sales process is more complex, sometimes it's almost impossible to tell. I think one of the easiest jobs, I say this probably willing to get called out, but I think one of these huge companies that when you're an exec at the top, there's so much middle stuff that's happening. It's almost impossible to be accountable because, as you said, like errors that happen in, say, Nike probably started 10 years ago. And it's like, oh, it wasn't me, it was them. And then it's like you get paid a lot of money to sit at the top and make decisions that you're not really attributable to. So...
And then you want to come in and just ride on the coattails of the previous person for 3 years. And cash in all the brand equity they gave. When you're not doing your job, you leave then, but your resume looks all right.
Looks awesome.
Because you capitalized on what was already built for you.
All the brand equity, and even... But it goes both ways, right? Because then even if you went in there and you did a stellar job and you made the best decisions and you did the really cool stuff, you might not reap those rewards for many years.
You set that up for the next person, yeah.
You know, same as, I mean, we're going down the rabbit hole now, but same as politics, same as all that sort of stuff. There's long-term changes. And I think sometimes it can attract some untrustworthy people who can, look at all the glory things. It's like, say what you will about Apple, but some argue that they haven't really invented anything for a long time. They've just done the same thing, improve it year on year since Steve Jobs was around. It's working. They're still one of the biggest companies in the world.
Yes. And it would be difficult. Like when people say they don't innovate in this enough, like it would be difficult. Like they can't radically change what they do. They're a behemoth. I mean,
you think of a new product, but I agree. And also, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
Like iPhones still sell like mad. iPads sell like mad.
And it just wouldn't be possible. Like you can't radically change Apple. Like they wouldn't have the infrastructure. They wouldn't have they have everything in place to execute their business. They have their core competence already nailed.
And anything new on top of that, maybe, if they were to come out with a bicycle or something ridiculous, it's like totally new, maybe. But I agree. Don't change the fundamentals. It's working. But
it still needs to make sense for them to release a bicycle.
Bad analogy.
But they're like, because that wouldn't be their core competence.
Yeah.
Like they're not good at making bicycles.
Yeah.
And there's so many things embedded in the company that mean that's not their core competence.
Yes.
I love it. I'm going to keep talking. This is fun now.
Yeah.
The core competence I love that because it's funny when people go, they go into a company, or they, a consultant tries to help out here or there, or there's all these examples where you see the company just can't do it. Like whatever they're trying to do, or whatever the consultant's brought in for, or whatever, the CEO is trying to do, or whatever it is, they just can't do it. They're not set up to do it. I'm not set up to play in the NBA, right? My body's not designed to do that.
Yeah.
As good as I could get at basketball. It's not my core competence.
Yeah.
So, and you have over time things that are, you build brand in people's head. And we saw recently, I'm not sure if you saw this, with Bud Light over in America, and they used a transgender person to do a TikTok, like an influencer
Oh, sorry,
thing for
yes.
them.
No, I did. Yeah. I'm thinking of Budweiser. Sorry, yes. Yeah, I do remember that. Yep.
And it got huge backlash and sales went down and all this type of thing. But that's because they'd built their brand over 60 years on a conservative base.
Yes.
It's already there. It's already, there's already so many things in place that you can't then...
You can go adjacent. You can do like something... You can do something complementary because it's, something to the side of it with that same persona, that same brand, that whole sort of core competency. But if you go hard right... I mean, you could luck out and do really well, or you could just totally ruin your brand. Yeah, I agree. And I think with that one there, it's like they probably played into what they thought was the right thing, and they probably, I'm sure there were ill intentions behind it of, we'll get into this market of people who are non-conservative. But then you're starting with a whole new brand, or not whole new, the foundations. You got to build that whole new brand to them.
Yes. And while you're pissing off your current,
you got to burn
customers.
down one bridge to go to the next.
Yeah. So that's where, you can't.
No, that was not a good decision.
Yeah. So, wow, we've talked about a lot of things. This is going to be about customer acquisition costs this episode. But hey, let's talk about...
Variable rewards, right? You don't know what you're going to sign up for.
But this, I guess it is conceptual, right? We're talking about the conceptual thing about customer acquisition costs, and that, yes, they're very difficult because there's so many things that go into why someone buys. Yeah.
I think the whole thing of this is, the point of all this is that cost of acquisition, in my eyes, people want simple answers. There are no simple answers. People want simple metrics and simple levers to pull to make money. It doesn't exist.
Yeah, and one-to-one levers. Like I increase money here and sales go up here. Like this single variable relationship.
And what I've said to a couple of executives, they didn't like it. But I've said that if that was the game, then anyone would be an executive. Yeah. If it was just like, they didn't like hearing that. I said, if I want an answer.
Brave man, Alex.
I was on the way out of the company anyway. But if it's like, if all it is money go up, costs go down, please. In all seriousness, like, what's your job then? That's the ability for a good leader, a good executive, is to see the forest through the trees and have that ability to make smart decisions. Yeah. And if you're going to blame the person under you for not giving you the right metric, that's probably on you. Yep. Sorry, other executives, whoever's listening out there.
Yeah. Amazing. I'm thrilled with that episode.
Cool.
Thank you for talking to me, Alex.
Thanks on the show, mate.
Yes, I look forward to talking to you next episode, in episode 12.
Cool. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Push Podcast. Please remember to subscribe, and if you are enjoying the episodes, please leave a review of the podcast on your platform of choice. It really helps to build the podcast credibility and to help others find this type of information.